I find it very interesting that our monthly theme for August is inclusion in action. And these themes are created by a team of people sometime last year. And I know some of you have those spiritual journals, and so I try to stick with the themes a little bit so that you can keep up with them. But we are a spiritual organization that takes a stand for a world that works for everyone. And I believe we're the type of organization that can make a difference in changing the world, the whole world experience, because we stand on this spiritual truth of oneness for which the candle is lit this morning. But this month is about taking action about inclusion. So what I have found in life is that it's easy to know the spiritual truth, isn't it? It's easy to know the spiritual truth that the world should work for everyone, but sometimes it's challenging to know how to take action, how to do something to move that possibility into greater reality. I told you last week, if you were here, that I wanted to share some of my thoughts about John Lewis's Celebration of Life service. If I had been speaking last Sunday, I would have talked about it last Sunday, but I had to let Armand and Angelina do their thing because they were so fun and awesome, and they had a great message. But I said it's important enough that I'll bring it this week, because there are moments when we attend a memorial service that is very important to us. And while I didn't actually attend his service, I watched every minute of it. And these moments in these memorial services are when we, as those left behind, get to pause and consider what we were taught by the person who has made their transition. We get a free wake-up call, if you will, a reminder of what we're supposed to do with the rest of our lives. We're invited in a sacred way, and usually in a sacred space, to look at our lives from the perspective of the calling on our own soul. We're reminded that we too shall have a memorial service one day, and others will be pausing to assess their own experiences as they contemplate ours. And John Lewis's homegoing celebration was a significant pause for me personally. You know, I had the honor, as I mentioned last week, I had the honor of meeting him several times as a longtime resident of Atlanta, where he served as a representative. I got the chance to meet him because, talk about inclusion in action. I mean, John Lewis dedicated his entire life to making sure that the playing field was a little bit more level for every human being. You know, he worked to make sure that the right to vote included every American. He worked to make sure that the right to marry included every love. He worked to make sure that there was a seat at the table for everyone. Everyone was included. His actions displayed his convictions. His whole life was devoted to this idea of inclusion in action. President Bill Clinton spoke at his memorial service, as did former Presidents George W. Bush and Barack Obama. But Clinton relayed a story that I thought was very interesting. He said that he was asked this question: if God granted him one wish, what would his wish be? What would his wish be if he wanted to make the biggest difference in the world? And what Bill Clinton said was his wish was that every American would be infected with whatever it was that John Lewis got as a 4-year-old, and took throughout his lifetime to keep moving in the right direction, and to also lead others to move too, and to do it without hatred in his heart and with a song, and to keep moving to what he called the beloved community. And as I heard Clinton's one wish, this is one wish, that we be infected with whatever John Lewis was infected with, I found that to be very powerful. You know, if every American had a deep calling, if everyone in the world for that matter had a deep calling to make the world a better place, as John Lewis did, then they could answer that calling with a peaceful and determined heart too. And they could lead others toward that we would have indeed a beloved community. We would. And as I paused and contemplated the actions of John Lewis, I had to listen more deeply to the calling within myself. You know, as I prepare my talks, I look for quotes to share with you. I mean, what other wisdom can I bring into the room? You know, I read so many different things. And today, there's really no better person to quote than John Lewis himself. And although many of you likely read it, or perhaps you listened to Morgan Freeman read it in memoriam, I've decided I want to read to you Congressman Lewis's final letter. It's so timely and it goes perfectly with my message today. And I invite you to listen to it as if John Lewis wrote it personally to you, to us. And here's what he said. He had this published, in case you've been living under a rock the last couple of weeks. He had it published in the New York Times. He wanted it published on the day of his funeral. And so this is what he said. The title of it is, "Together You Can Redeem the Soul of Our Nation." He said, "Though I am gone, I urge you to answer the highest calling of your heart and stand up for what you truly believe. While my time here has come to an end, I want you to know that in the last days and hours of my life, you inspired me. You filled me with hope about the next chapter of the great American story when you used your power to make a difference in our society. Millions of people, motivated simply by human compassion, laid down the burdens of division. Around the country and the world, you set aside race, class, age, language, and nationality to demand respect for human dignity. That is why I had to visit the Black Lives Matter Plaza in Washington. Though I was admitted to the hospital the following day, I just had to see and feel it for myself that after many years of silent witness, the truth is still marching on. Emmett Till was my George Floyd. He was my Rayshard Brooks, Sandra Bland, and Breonna Taylor. He was 14 when he was killed, and I was only 15 years old at the time. I will never, ever forget the moment when it became so clear that he could easily have been me. In those days, fear constrained us like an imaginary prison, and troubling thoughts of potential brutality committed for no understandable reason were the bars. Though I was surrounded by two loving parents, plenty of brothers and sisters and cousins, their love could not protect me from the unholy oppression waiting just outside that family circle. Unchecked, unrestrained violence and government-sanctioned terror had the power to turn a simple stroll to the store for some Skittles or an innocent morning jog down a lonesome country road into a nightmare. If we are to survive as one unified nation, we must discover what so readily takes root in our hearts that could rob Mother Emanuel Church in South Carolina of her brightest and best, shoot unwitting concert goers in Las Vegas, and choke to death the hopes and dreams of a gifted violinist like Elijah McClain. Like so many young people today, I was searching for a way out, or some might say a way in, and then I heard the voice of Dr. Martin Luther King Jr. on an old radio. He was talking about the philosophy and discipline of nonviolence. He said it is not enough to say it will get better by and by. He said each of us has a moral obligation to stand up, speak and speak out. When you see something that is not right, you must say something. You must do something. Democracy is not a state, it is an act, and each generation must do its part to help build what we call the beloved community, a nation and world society at peace with itself. Ordinary people with extraordinary vision can redeem the soul of America by getting in what I call good trouble, necessary trouble. Voting and participating in the democratic process are key. The vote is the most powerful nonviolent change agent you have in a democratic society. You must use it because it is not guaranteed. You can lose it. You must also study and learn the lessons of history because humanity has been involved in this soul-wrenching existential struggle for a very long time. People on every continent have stood in your shoes, though decades and centuries before you. The truth does not change, and that is why the answers worked out long ago can help you find solutions to the challenges of our time. Continue to build a union between movements, sometimes times across the globe because we must put away our willingness to profit from the exploitation of others. Though I may not be here with you, I urge you to answer the highest calling of your heart and stand up for what you truly believe. In my life, I have done all I can to demonstrate that the way of peace, the way of love and nonviolence is the more excellent way. Now it is your time to let freedom reign. When historians pick up their pens to write the story of the 21st century, let them say that it was your generation who laid down the heavy burdens of hate at last, and that peace finally triumphed over violence, aggression, and war. So I say to you, walk with the wind, brothers and sisters, and let the spirit of peace and the power of everlasting love be your guide. John Lewis. I'm not Morgan Freeman. John Lewis calls us, each of us, to lay down the heavy burdens of hate and let the spirit of peace and the power of love guide us. If we're going to actively involve everyone and include everyone in our circle of love, we must recognize how splendidly complex every individual is, how splendidly complex we are, and we are as a whole. We are each so complex, aren't we? It isn't just our race. It's our personality, our gender expression, our sexuality, our preferences, our religious upbringing, our economic status, our overall cultural influence, opening our proverbial arms and hearts to everyone, wide enough to embrace and include everyone, is a lifelong quest. Yet it's our deepest calling as a spiritual being. We must first understand ourselves. We got to get really clear as to who we are as an individual and what we bring to the table. There's also great value for us as a collective to get clear on who we are as a community, but also as a human race. And we got to know what else is at the table. Only when we can stand in the power of self-knowledge and identity can we celebrate the identities of others and foster inclusion. So let's start there. What parts of yourself and your own identity have you repressed or abandoned along the way? It's so easy to identify parts of ourselves that have not been fully appreciated and accepted in society around us, and recognize that there's been pressure to fit in all along. You know, growing up as a lesbian, I have to say that I repressed that part of my identity for so long, trying to fit into the heterosexual world around me, trying to be invisible to avoid being targeted by intolerance, and trying to stay loved by people who may not love me if they knew who I really was. And I'm sure many of you can relate, perhaps not to that part of identity. Perhaps you're a person of color trying to repress your heritage in order to fit into a white-centered world of America. Or perhaps you're a gender-fluid individual trying to fit into a cisgendered society and structure. Perhaps you come from a socioeconomic experience and you're in debt trying to fit into a community around you. Or perhaps you're an introvert trying to fit into the loud, extroverted world that we're in. The God in you demands that you love yourself. Include yourself in your own circle of love. The world around us may reward and automatically include certain characteristics and cultures and identifiers, but we are called to love and include all of these facets we find within ourselves and our experiences. Our mental health and our emotional health depend on it. And since there's such a strong mind, body, spirit connection, our physical and our spiritual health depends on us loving and celebrating and integrating all aspects of who we are. We've got to declare ourselves a blessing to the world just as we are. You might agree that we're all individualized expressions of the divine. Therefore, technically, we're all the same and we're unified. That's a spiritual truth. We're together in the mere fact that we're all alive. We're unified in the reality that we're all breathing and thinking, and we all have gifts, and those gifts are expressed through our nature, through the richness of our complexity. But sometimes we declare ourselves colorblind and gender blind and sexuality blind, and we see everyone as the same. Everyone's the same, and we treat them all the same. But instead, we must declare ourselves colorful. Our world is full of color and depth of culture. Instead of refusing to see color and all forms of diversity, instead of refusing to see them, we must insist on seeing color and diversity everywhere. We must demand that around every table there is color and diversity of every kind. As I said, we're all emanations of the divine, but each of us are unique and at the same time unified. It's a paradox. We can know God more deeply and reveal an experience of inclusion in our lives and communities when we have good self-awareness and awareness of others. But the question remains, why? Why do some people continue to not accept the differences of others? Why do I continue to not accept fully people that act differently and live differently than I do? We all have these hidden biases that challenge our ability to love everyone. You know, many of us have worked for years to release and heal those biases that we have within us, and our tendencies to withhold love and appreciation for certain groups and types of people. But each of us have these subconscious biases, those of which we are not aware. But with the help of trusted friends and therapists and practitioners, we can become more aware of those biases and begin to release them. We as humans, because of how our brains work, we tend towards categorizing people and experiences, and we pair that inner tendency with systems around us that promote those categorizations that have historically promoted inequity and cultures of supremacy. We adopt some biases that do not serve us well in loving ourselves and others in a fully realized way. So what do? What do? We begin to ask ourselves deep and good questions about what we believe about people and assume about others, how we treat people based on those subconscious beliefs. We begin to figure out what we actually do believe about humanity and live and take action based on our own beliefs and those that we were taught by someone else. Howard Thurman says this: there is something in every one of you that waits and listens for the sound of the genuine in yourself. It is the only true guide you will ever have. And if you cannot hear it, you will all of your life spend your days on the ends of strings that somebody else pulls. What does the genuine in yourself really say to you? I want to give you an experience of that. I want to show a music video to you, and then I have some more thoughts to share. Lenny Kravitz's song. So those of you who are watching this talk later, we won't be able to include the video in the posting of the talk. So Google Lenny Kravitz, Here to Love, and watch the video. And what the lyrics said was this: we must all unite, for we are one creation. We must join the fight, together we are strong. We must do what's right in every situation. Love each other's lives as you would do your own. Just think twice before you cast your stone at someone's soul. It's their life, so the choice is theirs, and theirs alone. We're not here to judge. We're here to love. There's no room for hate. We're just one human race. We must rise above. We are here to love. There's no time to waste anymore. We are here to love. So how did you feel when, inside yourself, how did you feel when you watched that kind of diversity on display? Were you able to check yourself and realize that each of those individuals were showing you what I call a magic suit. But beyond those exterior differences, each one of these people, each one of us, each one of every person out there has a very complex identity. Each one has a history and a culture and an understanding of themselves that's very different than anyone else's. Each one has a perspective that has been developed through their lifetime of experiences. Each one has loving and joyful moments. Each one has troubling times and challenges, heartache and sorrow. Each one has been treated differently based on their skin color and their hairstyles and their choice of dress and their ways of speaking. And each one is God in human form. God is not watching us from a distance. God is within each one of us. And no matter what any of those unique qualities are, we are only here to love. Not tolerate, not accept, not label, just to love. We're called to appreciate each person as an individual that is splendidly complex. Healing cannot happen until we take an honest inquiry within ourselves. When we're willing to do this, it is an important step in building a practice of being aware of others and ultimately loving people well for exactly who they are. So let's bravely explore our own identities and all of its complexity and splendor. Let's look at what is asking for healing within ourselves. Let's kindly and boldly explore our subconscious biases, the work of coming to know and love the self, and the work of coming to know and love the other is the ability to actually see other people and love them for who they are, and that is divine action. It's a work of seeing and knowing and loving God more deeply because God is in each one. It's the act of being awake to the truth that the soul of the universe is our soul too. And may we have lifetimes that honor John Lewis and live towards his idea of beloved community. And I want to close with one quote by Thomas Merton. The beginning of love is the will to let those we love be perfectly themselves, the resolution not to twist them to fit our own image. If, in loving them, we do not love what they are, but only their potential likeness to ourselves, then we do not love them. We only love the reflection of ourselves we find in them. Let the other be the other. I invite you to pray with me. What I breathe and know is that the Mother, Father, God, the creator of all things, the source of all life, is right here in this room showing up as each and every one of us. I know that the breath that each one takes is the holy breath of God itself, filling this unique and different and diverse magic suit that is absolutely splendid and absolutely complex. I am so thankful for this community that stands with me, in accepting and embracing and loving all. I take a stand for that we are a community that works for everyone and nothing less. I will not accept anything less. And so I stand with this in gratitude for those in this room, for those who hear my voice no matter when they hear it. I am standing here in gratitude for John Lewis and for every person who carries that same infection within them to love all and to make sure there is a place at the table for everyone. And I invite you to say with me and affirm this word. And so it is.